right, welcome back to the Ember podcast. Today for our show, we're dedicating it all to Ashes of Creation. We're going to be talking about PVE and PVP in the game. We actually have some pretty awesome co-hosts on today. We have Zara, guild leader of Nexus, and SaintNerd, who's one of our Twitch streamers here at Ember. Welcome on board, guys. Let's start off with Zara since she's our guest today. Zara, why don't you just introduce yourself real quickly?
Hi, I'm Zara. I'm the guild leader of Nexus. I really am excited to be here on Ember podcast today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Glad to have you. All right, and Saint, why don't you introduce yourself real fast?
Hello guys, I'm SaintNerd. I stream for Ember right now. We're going to be starting Alpha 1 soon, so that's going to be pretty exciting. Can't wait for that. 24-hour streams. Get ready.
Oh yeah. You know it, man. It's going to be awesome. All right, well, today our topic is all about PvP and PvE in Ashes of Creation in the world of Zara, and what we hope to see, Intrepid accomplish with it, to make MMOs great again. There's a lot of games in the past that we have our fond memories of the different encounters, like the 40-man raids in Vanilla WoW, for example, or the open world combat that you might see in BDO. People, sometimes enjoy that kind of stuff. So, there's a lot there that we can draw on to see what we would want to see in this game. Let's start off with the PvE aspects of it first. For PvE, what MMOs have you guys played in the past that you enjoyed, that PvE experience in, and why? Let's start off with Saint first.
One MMO that I really enjoyed the PvE in was WildStar, actually. WildStar, before the free-to-play swap, WildStar was really solid in its PvE. It was action-based combat. You had reticles on the ground you had to avoid for bosses, and they went the hardcore difficult route. A lot of people didn't like it, so the game really didn't get too far. But if you were into the hardcore like that, it was so much fun.
Yeah, I can definitely sympathize with that.
I hope to see some of that in Ashes. Maybe not too much. Some of that.
Yeah, let's not do a second version of it. But yeah, I can definitely say there is need for that balance. Having those aspects there for those hardcore players, the people that are going to be consistently online, consistently playing this game, making up the community in this game. That's important. It's also just important to have some aspects for the more casual people too. So that people don't get shut out of content because they literally just can't do it. Well, Zara, what about you? What's your favorite MMO that you've played in the past for PvE, and why was it the best in your mind?
Either Blade and Soul for me or Guild Wars 2. I think that the combat for both are very unique and interesting. The dungeons that you come across are very interesting as well. For example, for Blade and Soul, there's different patterns that the bosses go into, like many MMOs actually, but it just felt like you had to be a certain criteria in skill level to actually be able to accomplish those goals inside the dungeons, and I thought that was very important. But also just the casual mob grinding. It was very interesting seeing all the different mob characters and whatnot.
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that as well. That's actually something that a lot of MMOs don't really have anymore, except for maybe like the RNG grind, which is a whole different type of grind than, the typical grind you used to have back in the day. It used to be that content was too difficult to do at a certain level, so you'd grind until you got high enough of a level past it so where you could go back and complete that quest or complete that dungeon. Nowadays it's all about the RNG, which I can definitely say is probably one of the things that hurts modern MMOs quite a lot, especially with the pay-to-win mechanics of, BDO, for example, or you can literally just buy and buy again and with real money until you get it, or hope to get lucky as a player that's not doing that. For myself, when it comes to PvE, I've played a lot of different games. When it comes to the different ones that I've really enjoyed, a lot of times PvE is also very much about the story. It's very much about the immersion for me. Being able to actually really understand why you're wanting to kill this dungeon boss or why you're actually wanting to destroy this raid boss. That, from an immersion perspective, is very difficult to come across nowadays. There's bosses for example, in SWTOR, where you get to actually understand their motivations, their characters behind them, right? Like the Grey Jedi, for example. This whole backstories, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff there that really builds into why you want to go spend hours just grinding away against the same thing again and again, other than just getting the best gear. Because gear is nice, but I mean, once you get it all, then what's there left to do?
Exactly.
It's all about cosmetics.
Exactly. So that kind of leads into our next little section here, which is what do you guys expect to see in dungeons in terms of like layout, difficulty, mechanics in a basic dungeon? What do you guys hope to see? Let's start off with Zara.
In my opinion, I think the dungeons in Ashes of Creation will be very versatile. I think that they'll be very unique, especially with the aspects of the hidden rooms, and perhaps the bosses will be very unique in the sense of combat as well, with what tactics they use. Maybe it'll shape up and change. But I think it'll be a very unique run. I think that the dungeons themselves will be very expansive or small. I don't know. I think they'll be all over the place. I think it'll be awesome. I think that sums up what I want to say.
Okay. All right, Saint.
Well, I'm going to quote Steven here. And he said there are going to be enormous dungeons to accommodate multiple groups.
Yes.
So I'm expecting we could spend days in here. I'm expecting like Ultima.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no.
Give me 7 floors deep and let's map the whole thing. I'm gonna play a dwarf, so you all know. So I'm ready. I'm ready for that.
By the time you come out the dungeon, like the whole nodes will be destroyed and rebuilt.
We'll discover a hidden node underground that no one knows about.
Right.
Something crazy. But as far as like the rest of dungeons goes, I expect them to be pretty big for the most part. Enough to accommodate a few people at least.
Yeah. I hope so as well. Yeah.
Difficulty will be a thing. They will be meant for groups. It's not I don't expect people to walk in and solo them.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a thing, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, that's just on that one aspect alone, being able to solo a dungeon. I had a conversation the other day with someone who said that, that's what they want to be able to do. They want to be able to just solo through content. I'm like, well, why? This is an MMO. It's not an RPG. But the one response that he gave me for that was very much, well, what if I can't find a group? And that's a valid concern for a lot of modern MMOs. You a lot of times can't necessarily find a group. For example, in Final Fantasy XIV, you could literally spend half hour, hours, days trying to get into certain dungeons if you're not lucky. If you're a DPS, forget it. You're never getting in.
Just because.
Right.
I'm not going to wait 45 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So from a communal aspect, what I'm hoping that these dungeons accomplish, especially with how they're developing their tavern system in this game, the fact that you actually have to physically go to a tavern in your node, you have to say, hey, who wants to actually participate with me to go to this dungeon that just opened up outside the outskirts of town because we just hit the new level. You're actually going there, meeting friends, you're seeing people's faces. You're getting to know their names, which, nowadays, like in WoW, for example, I don't remember half the people that I run into in the auto queue for that dungeon. No one does, So from my perspective, I'm hoping for that, that difficulty to be high enough to where you cannot solo it. I think that's very important to make sure that you actually do have to require a group to go through it. Even like at least a medium-sized group. Maybe like you could have to 3, 4 maybe. Yeah. You don't necessarily need. Right. Exactly. Maybe if you're really good, you can get away 3 or something like that.
I think a good point to make for those who are afraid that they can't find groups is that Ashes of Creation is relying on the multiplayer system Steven himself is very strong about that. So they're probably going to do whatever they can possibly do to make it so that you can find somebody to group up with. So I think there will be no issues with that, especially with all the guilds, with all the small group friends, everything. It'll be very easy to make friends and find people.
That's what I'm hoping for. And with dungeon complexity, oh my gosh, like you're saying, like he said, there's gonna be massive. What if you go down to a hidden room in like the dungeon? You spend like weeks, maybe months, just searching through this meticulously, and you find some rock that doesn't look quite right. You press it, and it opens up a door to like some hidden cave that's concealing a hibernating dragon, and you accidentally trigger a world event that like causes your node to be attacked by this thing. You know, there's so much you could do in some of these that from a storytelling perspective would be amazing.
And the way they're doing it is so genius, because if they wanted to implement something else, they could throw small things in patches all day long and just come up with more ideas as they go.
Exactly. So from a complexity standpoint, I'm hoping it's complex. From a perspective of difficulty, I'm hoping it's difficult. From a lore perspective, I also hope to learn a lot from lore in these games through the dungeons themselves. What would you guys say as far as like lore in games that you've enjoyed the way that they've portrayed it, especially when it comes to PVE and how they've done that?
Like, are we calling out specific games?
Yeah. Like, it doesn't have to be an MMO. It could be like an RPG too. But Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings Online actually did a really good job of telling like a weird side story in a way. If you didn't play through the whole thing, it's really interesting, and it's legitimately worth the money it costs to play through the whole thing, because it's expensive. Sorry, Lord of the Rings Online, but you're expensive. $40 for an expansion is ridiculous.
A little bit.
So that story was really, really good. Also, like Star Wars, which Star Wars was it? Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2.
Yes.
Told a really good story also.
For me in particular, I'll bring up an RPG, Dragon Age Origins, one of my favorite, my favorite RPG. Told really good side stories with codex. Like, you would have these notes that are around books, you know, they would have all these things. And if you actually sat down and read these things, because people constantly want to bustle through games for no reason, they put all this content in a game for you specifically, not for them, because they're making the game for you. And you read them and you find all this expansive like lore, and it's just, it goes on, and there's reasonings for reasonings. It's just great. I think it's a really good thing to have something like that.
I agree. I completely agree. And being that Steven made this game out of his D&D campaign, like, I'm hoping for like hidden little pieces here and there, like that codex, or even like from Dark Souls, where if you pick up an item, it has a little story attached to it. You know, stuff like that. They've mentioned that there's not going to be like any voice actors in this game. There's not going to be anything from like an audio perspective as far as that goes. But, you know, there are other ways of telling the story that doesn't blow their budget, that doesn't, require a lot of investment, like those codexes. So I'm hoping that we see those in dungeons as well. What would you say would be like your ideal dungeon? If you could step in,
you want to go first?
You have the $5,000, one of those $10,000 backers. You can create like whatever dungeon you want in the game.
No.
What would you create?
It's gonna be so horrible.
I would probably, like, anybody who knows this dungeon would appreciate this. I would, floor for floor, recreate the Stygian Abyss from Ultima 6. It's like 7 floors deep, and the floors are like approximated like 10 miles across. They're just ridiculously huge dungeons, and when you go in, there's no map.
Oh, wow.
You have to
navigate. Oh God.
You have to make your own notes.
That would be actually pretty cool.
So my quick question is, to get to the point. When you enter a dungeon and you complete the dungeon, is there like an exit that leads you out to like another end or something? Is that what they plan on doing, or do you have to run all the way back to the top?
It's a good question.
I think the first dungeon run thing video we saw, they beat the boss, and then the boss came through the wall, and that was their exit.
Okay.
Beat the boss, they could go through that way. That was the one example I think we've seen.
It looked like it teleported them as well to like a starting location.
Okay.
But that may not be how they do it in game. That could have just been for that one example. It could be that maybe certain dungeons let you go like a certain path through like a mountain, for example. Like whereas naturally that mountain would be a barrier that you wouldn't be able to cross. That could be, it could be kind of like the mines of Barad-dûr. It's like it'd be very. You got that reference. It'd be very cool. Like it. See, I would love those little details in the game. All right. So as far as the next kind of aspect that most people think about when they think about PvE, they usually expect, raiding. Yeah, exactly. You know it. So what raids have you guys kind of went through that you would say that needs to be duplicated, or they need to take away things from that and implement that in some way in this game?
I will let Zara go first.
Okay, so when I think of raiding, it can either apply to PvE or PvP. We're talking PvE, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so definitely communication is a big important part of raiding. In a lot of games, like, I don't know, I'll pull up Terra, for example. When you run through dungeons with people, or any kind of PvE raiding, there's a lot of lack of communication due to the games not having, in-voice channels, or like the people just grouping up together who don't know each other. I think it's very cool to have the Discord implementation that Ashes wants to do to actually be able to communicate with the people that you're going to be with, spending maybe hours or days with, that is really important because you get bored, it's cut and paste, it's just, but yeah.
Let's be
I think I'd like to see that.
Let's be realistic here. Years, not days.
Yeah.
We're gonna be playing this for years.
Oh yeah.
Definitely true.
All right, Saint, what about you, man?
Well, like as far as like raids people would know that I've done, like when they were current content, is AQ40. If you know that one. It's Encourage 40 man from the original opening in World of Warcraft Classic. I was there for that. That was a once in a lifetime event.
Nice.
I believe they need to do things like that. Once in a lifetime events, like things that will only happen once. And if you're not that people will say that doesn't cater to casual players, but I've seen like Guild Wars 2 has done that and it works really well. They do a one-time event, like you can watch it again, like the cutscene, but the event itself only happens once. I like events like that. That's kind of cool. It's exclusive. If you weren't there for it, you won't have that memory. I think they have some planned in this game already.
I can definitely see them doing that too. They've already talked about it from a perspective of having raids that you can't necessarily prepare for. The fact that the raids themselves may change over time.
I also expect these raids to be huge.
Yes, definitely.
300 people.
300
guilds are supposed to cap around 250 or 300. I'm expecting 300 man raid content. I want huge dragons. Let's go. Just D&D, it's got to have big dragons in it.
Yes, I would agree. I would definitely agree with you on that. In fact, if they have one of the most hardest raids, like let's say one of the ones that they were saying that only the top 10% of the hardcore raider teams could possibly complete, like maybe for one of those you get like at the end of beating that giant dragon, one of the eggs that you can hatch by bringing it to one of the master animal tamers, for example, or master breeders, and they can hatch it and they can grow it for you, and then you have like a little baby egg that you can ride as like a mount into battle. There's definitely some rewards there that they can include that would be very unique, that would basically encourage that that hardcore end. From a more casual or semi-hardcore perspective as well, I think there will be a variety of different raid types in there that open up throughout the world. Yeah, it may actually be interesting though. We might get to where there's a certain level of combinations of nodes where you only get 1 or 2 raids popping up, and those are 2 are the hardest. No one can do them.
We
And that
might have to move nodes because we can't do the content.
exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how they implement that. From mechanics, okay. So from a mechanic perspective, obviously a 40-man raid on the face of just organizing it alone, that's difficult to get people together for that. It's difficult logistically to get people together for that. It's difficult to get those people to work together through the mechanics of a game when they need to be doing things where someone doesn't just purposely screw it up every single time, right?
Oh man, that day
Yes.
AP40 opened, that was the most chaos I've ever seen in my life.
Exactly.
There were like 60 guilds with their 40-man teams. Well, it's chaos.
Oh yeah. So in that chaos, how do you balance that where you don't have just basically just a DPS sponge, right? Where you don't have just like a 40-man group just DPSing something down until, either it kills them or you kill it. How do you build the mechanics that are also easy enough to where people can learn them? And there's 40 people can actually accomplish those. How do you do that?
Well, I would think that Steven's mentioned a lot that groups are going to have to be very diversified. You're going to need a lot of these different classes, utilities to get about doing things and such. So bosses, big raid bosses like that would have to somehow include most of, if not all of the classes' different mechanics at one point, which would be insanity. Because we're talking 64 different unique abilities. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play that. If they might end up being too easy and they have to beef them up, or if they do it that way, they might be way too difficult.
Right.
We'll see.
Zara, what do you think?
So specifically for is it 40v40s that we're talking about?
Right, so 40-man raids. Specifically like a raid boss or a raid that you have to go through with 40 different people. So what mechanics do you think could they implement in there that it doesn't become just like a chaotic mess, because no one can accomplish all these things. There's no way you can organize that. But also not make it too casual where it's just literally people just DPSing and healing. It has to have a balance, right?
Yeah, so to rehash on what I said, the Discord chat will definitely help. I think that when you do dungeons, you should get a rank. So if you get certain contribution points from your other rank members or your group members, it can level up your rank to be superior than others. So maybe you do a lot of dungeons and you do it really well and swiftly, you get the raid leader rank. So if you do a 40v dungeon with all these other people, it'll automatically put you at that raid leader rank if you want it or not. Otherwise, it'll transfer the rank to the next best person. I think that will do a quick and easy way to organize things, along with how Discord's implementing for voice chat, where the people who are the more powerful in the Discord chat can speak above other people. So I think that would be an interesting alternative because I don't really see that in other MMOs, and maybe it would work. But
it could definitely help. I mean, the one trade-off though with that is that then you have more of an elitist mindset too.
That's
so you
true.
have people being excluded because they're not at that rank. So that
Two has a system like this.
Yeah.
You have to purchase it for yourself. So you have to.
You have to purchase what?
Guild Wars 2 has a thing where you can become a commander for PvP raids.
And you buy it?
Yep, you purchase
Ooh,
it.
interesting.
And it puts a big blue arrow over your head so everybody knows.
Oh, well, of course the game wouldn't be pay to win in that sense, since I do consider that pay to win. But anybody can rank up, right?
Well, no,
I mean, maybe
the
people could
arrow you
even
buy
boost
with-
themselves up.
You buy it with in-game currency, not real money.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's not pay to win at all. Guild Wars 2 is good.
Okay.
It is one of the better MMOs out there right now for sure.
No, they're a good model.
Oh yeah. What I would say is, as far as like mechanics go in the game, I think there should be like maybe a way to split off certain parts of your raid group. So if you have a 40-man raid group, you would have certain aspects of the raid that requires, parts of that to go split off onto their own little things. So that to me would be kind of like the only way you'd be able to do it.
Sectioning off each raid group into
Yeah.
smaller versions, and they all like meet up at a boss.
Exactly.
Okay, so all with one raid leader.
Right. So, well, you need at least four
More or less,
four or five raid leaders. All different, basically all of them calling out the different, shot calling in that sense.
But how do you think they would all synchronize? Do you think they would have their own chat that they could send messages into?
They'd be all in the same voice chat, but they'd be the only ones speaking.
Okay.
That's one of the keys with that. With that many people, if they're all talking, if they're all yelling through things, no one's gonna be able to understand what's going on. It has to be only the raid leaders that would be able to talk. So, like you were mentioning with Discord, they have a promotion that basically promotes certain people in the Discord to have their voices heard over other people. Specifically with a raid, while you're in a counter for the raid, those rules should be don't talk. Let the leaders talk, because you have to be able to hear them call out different things.
Yeah.
With 4 or 5 different raid leaders on a single raid of that size, which you would need that many, you would have 4 or 5 different groups at that point running through different aspects and completing different tasks. So beforehand, that planning aspect, you need to make sure that you're actually planning out what each of these groups needs to be working on specifically. So you're going to fail through that raid like hundreds of times probably. Yeah, which that challenge is what needs to be there. What would you say? Oh yeah, well, it's not even just a world first. It's a lot of things nowadays are very easy to do in MMOs. They don't really require that much skill or ability anymore.
But I am going to say Ember is going to get smaller first.
Oh yeah, we are. As far as the aspect of the challenge goes, how difficult do you think the average raid should be? Like, should it be something you complete in a day, a week, a month, maybe even a year?
It should be something a group walks into the first time. They've all of them are new. They first walk into it and they wipe on the first pull and go, "Oh crap!"
Yeah.
Take it seriously.
And they rethink their situation. I love to see a type of raid like that.
I agree. I want to add on to say that a lot of these dungeons should make you learn. Yes. Learn your character, learn your grouping. It really should teach you something. But overall, there's different levels of player types: casual, hardcore, semi-hardcore, depending on how you want to face it. It really it depends. But you also have to take into consideration, should a casual member with less grind and less work be able to get this legendary sword that some hardcore player is going to work for and work their ass off for? So I think that's the difference, because if you're a casual player, you can expect casual rewards as opposed to hardcore player.
I can agree with that.
This game actually caters to that.
Right, and that actually kind of brings us into this next little subsection of this, which is the rewards for a raid completion. Like you guys are saying, when it comes to what you actually get out of it. One thing that they've mentioned is that there's not going to be actually like armor or gear dropping from a raid boss. It's going to be materials that build into the economic side of the world. You have to take those materials to a master crafter who can then make what you want. So farming materials is going to be one of the biggest things, but they've said that they don't want it to be farmable for a raid. They don't want a raid to be something that you can go farm. So it's going to be encouraging from a PvP aspect too, to constantly find new raids that you can run through. So you have to constantly rebuild the world to make that happen. What do you guys think should be there?
And we don't know what's going to happen once we clear a raid. If we clear a raid, does it like crumble and disappear and nobody else can run it, or does it respawn and other people continue running it until it upgrades and goes away?
Well, they've mentioned adaptive AI. They haven't said what that is, but they said it's in relation to their Horde mode, which is a PVE mode that will be basically testing in the Alpha 1 Phase 1. So that adaptive AI, that makes me wonder, are they going to put that into the raids? Because they said
Right.
they don't want the raids to be farmable. So will the raids change? Will the boss mechanics change?
I think they have stated that the dungeons will,
Mhm.
like when you run a dungeon the second time, it won't be the same.
Right.
So I'm assuming the raids are going to be the same way, which for progression purposes and like world
Mhm.
firsting and stuff like that is going to be really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That brings on a point that I'm thinking of. So if a hardcore elitist group goes into a dungeon, they complete the dungeon and the dungeon's still there. Maybe it resets in a shape or form, but the mobs are weaker because they just got defeated, right? So
Mhm.
maybe that could bring on more casual players to actually run through the dungeon and get their own sort of reward.
Right. That's actually not
Yeah.
a bad idea.
That is a good idea, actually. That's perfect. You should send that over to Steven. Or if he watches this, hopefully he does. I don't know if he does or not. You should listen to that.
Streams in 2 days.
Yep. So from the next topic here then, so going from raids, there's also going to be the world event bosses, the world bosses themselves, the ones that wake up out of a mountain because you dug too deep, or the ones that are out at sea, that like the kraken that shoots up out of the water one day because you were going too far into like the ocean or something like that. You're going near the edge of the world or something. From a world boss perspective, what do you guys expect? What do you guys want to see?
Okay. So for me, I think that world bosses aren't unique anymore. They're not special, especially, for example, Guild Wars 2. I can download an app on my phone to tell when the world bosses pop up. I don't want that experience. That is boring. It's cut and paste and disgusting. For me, I think when the world bosses come around, of course, they're going to be difficult. I expect hundreds of people to be there all fighting this boss. That originality that anybody wants to see in a game, although it would be hard to continuously add on all these new bosses and new creatures, I suppose. But having that one-time experience, it should be one time for a reason. It shouldn't happen again, because unless it's a part of a story where he wasn't completely killed or something and he comes back alive for his second round, then finally dies. I don't want to see this world boss again after I kill it. That's my reward. I'm not going to defeat him again. But I think that overall sums up what I'm saying.
It'd be kind of cool. Now, from a perspective of what world boss would look like, does a world boss have to be this huge monster? Could it be like like some type of mysterious vampire that clawed its way out? Yeah.
It could be like Diglett size. Terrifying.
Okay.
We have no idea. World bosses should be terrifying.
They should be.
I think
They
so
should
too.
be something you don't want to go. You don't want to do a here, hold my beer and run up to it.
Exactly.
It's scary. That is what they should. It shouldn't be like a game I won't mention's world bosses where you could drag them across the map to the city.
Yeah.
And kill everyone.
Yep, I think I know what you're talking about.
So, yeah, I think they should be difficult, and they should drop maybe something like rare materials that only that creature would drop. Like you fight a colossal black dragon and it drops its scales or something like that. That's super unique that you're never gonna get twice.
But then again, it also leaves out people. They'll be really disappointed that they couldn't attend this first world boss that was in their server. Maybe they had to do something that day, and that would make me feel guilty that something wouldn't be there for them to experience, because it's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and it would be unfortunate. So I hope that there would be some way for them to get another experience without having to wait months.
Maybe
play every single day.
Or those particular bosses could be on a timer, but that timer is really long.
That would make sense as well.
Could be
6 months.
Maybe a better solution, so it is still a one-time event. Still something that goes down in the history books. Like at this point, 2020, AD or whatever it is. Like this boss showed up, and but maybe like a week, before that, you know, there could be like rumblings, you know, like changes in nature, you know, changes like you see
Like,
the animals start clearing out of the woods, you know, and you
oh,
notice
that's so cool.
there's no more
Set the mob
NPCs there.
spawn times to change.
Free lunch.
Yeah. So instead of like a notice that goes out to the server, it's actually like, hey, are you paying attention to the world? You know, because that would be from an immersion perspective. Dude, it gives me shivers, man.
Oh,
awesome.
yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
yeah.
I think so too.
Like, you know, for example, like with a kraken on the water, like what if all of a sudden you see the water start going black? You know, because the ink is flowing around it, and
Oh, that's so creepy.
you start seeing like a storm roll in or something like that. You know, there's a lot that you could do that's subtle that would warn people, give people maybe like a week or two in advance to start noticing something.
Or we start to get like an eclipse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Do you think that there should be cutscenes for stuff like that? Because
I don't
usually
know.
with bosses, there's cutscenes, right?
Maybe
Typically.
for, like, big one-time events.
Mm.
I would
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe see a cutscene.
Okay.
But at the same time, maybe not. Maybe the actual interaction is yourself going up against this thing. Maybe that's the story, you know? Because a cutscene
That's
usually
true.
is telling a story. You know, you could even have, you know, like some NPC come up afterwards after this defeated that relays some of its history, you know, like was like, you know, this was the dragon of, you know, Minas Tirith or something like that, you know, that basically was locked away many eons ago and finally, you know, arrived because the spell that was holding it, you know, broke because you guys got too close to it or something. There's lots of storytelling perspectives that you could do with that, but I'm not sure a cut screen would be necessary.
Okay.
Music though,
Be like up to that.
Music though is
music would be
definitely the
necessary.
most important. Yep. Music shapes the game.
Oh yeah. Who was the musician for Ashes of Creation?
Bear? Was it Bear?
Yeah, Bear, right?
Yeah, Bear. One thing I wanted to mention real quick is one thing I'm really excited for is the impending doom of these world bosses on nodes that really have an aspect in the world. So maybe a fishing village that really supplies the neighbor, and then all of a sudden the people over there are like dying out because they can't defeat this boss. You have to have like some initiative to actually want to, or incentive to actually want to kill the boss, because it will have an effect on your world.
I agree, and I think they've said that it will de-level a node. If like if you lose against it, your node could de-level, and then you lose a bunch of stuff. You know, like there has to be that consequence, and I think that, you know, that conflict being one of their central pillars, that's what keeps this world going. That's what keeps it interesting. Yeah, I completely agree. There needs to be some type of consequence, some type of if I don't actually fight against this thing, I'm going to lose something. You know. From a PVE perspective, I mean, that would be amazing. I don't think I've seen something like that in a game that like outside of like an RPG maybe, you know, but an MMO.
Yeah, I could see this being like every 4 or 5 days we get attacked.
Or maybe if you don't defeat the guy, he spawns more minions and they scatter across the map, and you actually now have to do something about it, even if you're on the other side of the world, you know? Right.
That would be pretty interesting. Be like almost like the what was the corruption from in Dragon Age?
Oh yeah, cool. Dark spawn.
Yep. All right. So as far as overall difficulty level, guys, do you think that it should be easy to level up, or do you think it should be difficult to level up? Should it take time? And that goes from a character's perspective.
I think it should take time, but it should take days or weeks of grinding. It should be a natural but slow progression through so you play the game.
Yeah. I don't want to be able to. Sorry, I don't want to be able to hit level 10 in the first, you know, hour of me playing. I can. In most games, I can grind to max level in probably 14 hours and then hit the end game. And I don't want that. I want maybe even it to last out to a month, just a month of leveling up for me. I think that would be very interesting.
I think from an XP perspective, there's too many games. Like, wow, like you fly by from like 1 to 60 really quick nowadays. With the BDO too, like you can get to max level within like a day or two. It's just so fast now that, like you said, you can't enjoy the game anymore. There's not a stopping to smell the roses, and there's no struggle, there's no meaningfulness behind it, because you're just that max level. You didn't actually really earn it, did you? It's kind of like just given to you because of how easy it was in that sense. And that's kind of a controversial thing to say in a sense, but it's true. I mean, when you look at a game, a grind is somewhat necessary. You need something to work for, because if you don't have that, what are you doing? Are you just twiddling your thumbs?
Exactly. Yeah.
You look at a game like EverQuest 1, back pre freaking Planes of Power, where it took you months, sometimes depending on the class you played, to level up to max, and then getting your AA points, which was a whole nother level experience for you. It took you a long time. So when you got that max level, other players appreciate it. They were like, wow, you're max level. That's impressive. You're geared too. Wow. It was a constant thing. It was you appreciate it more when it takes that time and you devote that time to a character.
I agree. I mean, it's so forgotten nowadays of like what it means to actually work for something. That's when you just get given something, right? Do you treat it better than what you would treat something that you yourself put a lot of time into making?
Definitely not.
The same thing goes with a lot of games nowadays. A lot of people pick up a game, get the little add-on, like with WoW, for example. You can just buy up to level like 80 with the 100. You can buy up to level 100 now. You can just get max level. Click of a button. That's easy,
And there's certain games that you're all good, that cater to those type of people who really want that aspect, who really want to just hit max level and impress people, and just with a drink of a potion you have max level and you have medium gear.
Right.
I think that's okay, as long as it's in your game. I don't want you touching my game. Stay in your space. But you know.
I mean, from a perspective of like Star Wars Galaxies, they had an update at one point in that turned one of the most prestigious possible classes you could be, the Jedi. You went from being super unique. You worked for that. You spent literally a year or more working for that. Trying to. Yeah.
Oh.
It takes forever to get to it, and then all of a sudden, one day, it's common. It's like everyone is a Jedi. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so
compensation.
And I lost 18 months of my life.
From a perspective of, being that it's a cool thing to be, right? A Jedi is pretty cool to be, but when everyone's a Jedi, is it cool anymore?
Exactly. That's a good point. As quoted by the guy from Incredibles, the villain who said,
Sinestro,
when everybody's a superhero, it's not original anymore. But yeah.
I can agree, man. I can definitely agree.
And with a game with 64 classes, it's going to be pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
So I do want, as far as like, PvE, I do want some accolades that, they're just like a title. I want like, basically maybe a robe, that I got on some epic quest that I found in some hidden dungeon room, on the 7th floor. I want those things that I can work towards that no one else can necessarily say they've accomplished, or very few people can say they've done it. That's super necessary for this game to thrive, in my opinion, because it keeps people coming back. It keeps people from getting bored on a PvE side of things. All right, guys. So we're going to move into the PvP section, kind of a hybrid, actually, of the two, between the, what kind of bridges the two there. My first question to you here is, what do you think in PvE promotes PvP? So what in this world do you think would basically cause, from a PvE perspective, conflict between other players? And I'll let whoever wants to speak go first. Saint, go.
So I think Steven mentioned at one point in one of the interviews or Q&As that like you get a city or you get a node up to Metropolis, and you might getting that node up to Metropolis, you might gain access to certain legendary recipes, things of that nature, for crafters and things. So say a warring guild or a rival guild or a guild that maybe you're allied with that doesn't have access to this finds out, that would give them a lot of reason to come after you if that's something they want, or if there's a particular dungeon they want to run, or if they don't want you to run, they might try to take out the node instead.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, dungeons are open world, and then raids themselves, people trying to accomplish those raid world firsts, people are going to be fighting at that entrance.
People are going to be fighting through the whole thing.
Oh yeah. Zara, what do you think?
Okay. So I think, hold on. Can you rehash the question real quick?
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost it.
It's all good. So from a PvE perspective, what do you think in the world of Ashes will cause conflict between other players and promote PvP?
Oh yeah, okay. So caravans to start with. Everybody raves about the caravans and how they'll have an impact around the world, and that will definitely be a pretty big influence. I think along the lines of there's going to be PvP in the hierarchy as well for militaristic nodes. They're giving you incentive to actually PvP to have a leadership role. And there's a lot of PvP in the world to begin with. You can find it everywhere. Some people don't want to grind out hours for working or like gathering items. They just want to go kill someone and get the items that they have. I think that's pretty fun. So yeah. That's
very true. And they've said that the resources you're carrying, not necessarily like your gear, not like your sword or your shield or your armor, but the resources you've gathered to help you create other things, those things will drop if you get killed by someone else in PvP. But then again, if someone kills you and they're just a PKer and they get corrupted, all of their stuff can drop. So there's consequences for them. It also makes them a lot weaker too if they just go out and attack you. Yes, there will be bounty hunters in this, which will be actually pretty awesome.
I cannot wait. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's so awesome.
Yeah. So for myself, for when it comes to PvE affecting PvP, like you said, the raid entrances, people going for those world firsts, people going through the dungeons, trying to, basically hold on to that so they can just farm it as much as possible so they can find all those secrets. There's going to be some major conflict over that, especially when it comes to two rival nodes. Like let's say if a dungeon opens up between them, now all of a sudden you have a common meeting ground, but I don't think everyone's going to be nice when, you're now competing to get XP.
Oh, no.
Or you're trying to compete to find the secrets of this dungeon, and all of a sudden 60 other people are trying to do the same thing right next to you because it's not instanced. You're going to fight to kill them.
Exactly.
You're going to take your stuff and you're going to make it happen, right?
And then I'm going to run the dungeon.
Exactly. So that actually also leads into our next section here, which is, what do you think as a PvE player, what benefits will being a PvP player provide to you? Like what do you think, would promote someone who's normally not going to go out and attack someone, who's not normally going to go out and fight someone to do that? Is it defending your home? Is it defending, your stuff? What do you guys think about that? Yeah.
I think freeholds are a really good example of that. If I'm out in my freehold, crafting furniture like I'm going to do, and somebody walks up and tries to wants to attack me or tries to kill me, oh yeah, that's going to initiate something. I'll flag up for that. You come and attack me on my property.
Oh yeah. All right. Zara, do you have any comments about that?
So I think that overall, you kind of want to keep a clean appearance depending on who you are. So if you're the leader of a metropolis, you don't want to be representing that metropolis as a PKer who's going around just mowing down people for their loot. That's not going to give you a good rep. That's exactly why you have Goonies to do it for you. And I cannot wait to hire a bunch of mercenaries to kick ass and take names. But basically, I think I would. But for me, flagging up personally, if you're hitting my guild member, if you're hitting me, I'm gonna defend myself, and you bet your ass I am. I don't know if we're allowed to cuss on this. Are we allowed to cuss on this? Too late. Should have asked prior.
Safe and just haven't been.
Right.
But yeah.
All right. Well, this kind of leads into our next section, which is all about PvP. We'll go through this a little bit quicker, just because we are running short on time. But now, so as far as games that you guys have played where you just loved the PvP in it, what games have those been, and why? If you could choose, like the one that you like the most.
Sorry.
Okay, so I really love PvPing because I get people mad, and that's my favorite. So, and like, I don't know, Tara, I would hit max level. I wouldn't be all that geared, and it's good. Like, on occasion, I'd be really skilled to the point that I could kill them without like having to actually gear myself up, and that's what I loved about it, because I don't have to spend hours or anything. I just have to be a little bit more skillful than them, and I can win. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love PvP, and I hope that Ashes makes it to the point that, skill is a necessity.
I agree.
I definitely agree on that. Being that this is going to be a hybrid system, that's going to be both action combat and tab target, there'll be definitely a skill gap for people to use the action combat over the other one. There'll be people that will just spend hours and hours and hours just honing their skills in the arena, but as soon as they get into the open world, they may not know what to do against a mob of 20 or 30 people when it's just them and 6 friends.
Yeah.
So there definitely will be a lot of strategy, a lot of randomness as well into what you might see in this game for PvP. Saint, what about you, man? What games have you played where you actually really enjoy the PvP, and why did you like it?
I hate to say it, but I did and enjoyed a lot of 3v3 arenas in World of Warcraft for a long time. 3v3 arenas was my stuff, man. I loved doing that. And with 64 different classes, it's going to be the amount of combinations for 3v3 arenas would be ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The comps people would come up with, it could be crazy, because there's also, you can do 1v1 and 5v5, which is also fun. I'm going to be playing a Guardian, so let's go.
Nice. Yeah.
Sounds
yeah,
good.
It's gonna be awesome. Nice.
That was my first initial class, but I changed over to Spell Sword.
Myself,
I'm gonna try everything that has tank on it, but
What about you, Sinbad?
well, for myself, some of the most fun I ever had in a PvP environment in a game was back in Star Wars Galaxies. They had open world guild versus guild battles, right? And once you declared against another guild, any other members were always open, no matter where they were at. There was no safe spots in the world. It was a lot of fun being able to, go and chase down these guys. Now, from what I remember, and it's been quite a few years, there wasn't really a good way of winning. It was just more like, hey, I have a beef with this guild. I'm just going to keep killing their guys until they give up, basically.
Yeah, it was.
But it was fun.
Just whichever one quit first.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm done. It was real fun if you were a Jedi. Just walking
Oh,
up.
yeah.
Bounty Hunter was AFK.
Also,
Definitely.
to bring up another quick game, Blade and Soul's combat is probably some of the best combat I've seen for, I think it also counts as tab targeting, but action combat. I really like how fast-paced it is, and fast-paced combat for me is the best option to go with. So that was a lot of fun PvPing people, because it felt like you were actually doing something. Like the hits felt like they hurt, and I don't know, it just gets you screaming and laughing maniacally. I don't know. That's for me at least.
Now, see, I'm super old school, and I love tab targeting and having 64 million buttons that I have to hit, and 19 action bars covering up my entire screen. And good luck playing the class because because bosses took 40 minutes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that, man. Especially when you did stuff that EverQuest doesn't like and you run 12 characters. That's a lot of fun.
Oh, jeez. I can't do that.
So
Alcoholic.
that kind of leads into my next question here, which is, in terms of like combat styles, mechanics, there is going to be a heavy balance in the system between tab target and action combat. You could go all tab target, or you could go all action combat. And a lot of people make the mistake of assuming that tab target means less skill. There's a lot of skill that goes into a tab target system. Oh yeah, especially at the very high end. Like you said, you could have multiple different action bars, multiple different rotations that you're working through, that you have to make sure you're memorizing those timers, specifically because each cooldown will have maybe a different timer.
Exactly. All your cooldowns are different, especially being in the tank position, raid leading on top of all of that. It's just which means more fun.
Oh yeah.
Great aspect. So yeah, I hope to see some of that maybe. But I don't mind action combat either. I like it.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I enjoy action combat from a perspective of it's a little bit more engaging to me. At least it feels more engaging, right? Like you're like, I'm doing things. I'm actually jumping through the air. I'm turning my reticle and I'm hitting this spot on the ground. There is some skill there too, from a perspective of, things are much quicker as far as the pace goes, right? And you have to actually aim your skill shots. But at the same time, there's also a little less in terms of what you have to think about in terms of the different layers and depth of that. So from that perspective, what do you guys hope to see that Intrepid would accomplish with this system? Like, what would you say is like a good balance between the two?
I think that a lot of equalizing class is going to be the hardest thing that they could possibly do with how in depth the classes will be. I can't see an immediate release to perfection when you're fighting, and the equalness between tab targeting and action. Like if I'm like action combating a tab targeter, maybe they have the advantage because they're going to be an archer and I'm going to be a swordsman, and I don't know, they're gonna flame me. I don't know what to expect, and I really just hope that they can take care of it.
For me, it's gonna come down to the play style of your character. Like for example, a ranger might not want to use action combat because they want that tab target. They want to be able to have that lock on and just do with their shots. Whereas a melee will want to use action most likely. Unless certain tank styles like myself, like tab targeting, where I know what I'm hitting. I have him targeted. He is locked in. I know who I'm attacking. So there's going to be that spin-off. I'm going to try them both, see which one I like better, and get a good feel for both of them.
From even like perspective of being like an evasion tank, so basically like a tank / rogue perhaps, where you have this really high evasion, action combat might be a lot better in that perspective, just because then you can actually literally dodge. But then again, it also plays into how does that work when you're on defense against someone who is using tab target? Because even if you would dodge out of the way of like what normally would hit you, you're still locked on. So there's a lot there. Yeah, there's a lot there from a term of balancing that's going to be very, very interesting. Because even if like let's say you don't do as much damage with the with the DPS aspect of like tab target. Like let's say that the individual skills themselves don't do as much as like one skill can from action combat. At the same time, if you're a ranger and you constantly have a dot on that person, no matter what.
And on top of a ranger, probably doing poisons and bleeds, so you're still ticking while they're still targeted on all sorts. Oh yeah.
I mean, you could have that followed up with someone whose tab target that's a mage, for example, too. Or maybe an action combat road just jumps in and spike damages him down to where he can't heal up fast enough. There's a lot there that combination wise, like you're saying, team comps, especially with 3v3s or even an open world, there's going to be so much depth that it's going to take literally, at least from what I hope, thousands of hours to figure out.
Oh, minimum.
Oh, yeah.
At least thousands.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I was thinking that it's going to be impossible to balance action and tab. I think that one might actually just have to teeter to the other side, because equalizing it's going to be very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I think in a 1v1 situation, there may still be a semblance of just pure skill between the two. So, like, let's say if you have a ranger and a ranger versus off, but one's pure action and one's pure tab, who's going to win, right? That tab targeting the ranger might be actually at an advantage because, like you said, he's always going to hit his target. Whereas with the other one, he knows now I can just dodge these attacks. So you have more consistent DPS. So there's definitely going to be... It's going to depend on the situation, I think. It's going to depend which one will win on that situation. Instead of rock, paper, scissors, it's calling me rock, paper, scissors, Spock, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that kind of leads into the next thing here, which is going to be sieges. Obviously, sieges are going to be a huge aspect to this game. Castle sieges, node sieges. They mentioned in a recent stream that none of that at all is going to be purely instanced. So from that perspective, what do you guys think is going to happen?
You can go, Saint.
I think anybody and everybody's going to jump in. If it's announced on the world map as like a big thing that's happening, like unless you can only see it if you're in the node, otherwise you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
But I think people are going to flock to it, and people are going to pick a side.
Yeah.
And they might be able to, like, if they get in the zone, if they get in the combat zone, they might have a button that says they can join a public group and pick a side, and like they join the public group and they say pick a side, attack or defend, and you get rewards for winning or either side.
Could be.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's going to happen, and then I think there's going to be a lot of these sieges going on. They're going to be constant in the beginning, at least. I feel like in the first 6 months of gameplay, we're going to see a lot of sieges going on.
Definitely, I could see that too. There'll probably be like lots of different nodes, for example, that are trying to vie for leveling so they don't get locked out by the other one. Especially in those early phases, that first level, as soon as you level up that node, that could lock out one that's next to you. And, if you wanted that spot, hey, we're at war now. Okay, come on, let's do it.
When we first log in for picking a server, and then the second we log in, open the map. All right, where are we going? Which node are we going to go to? And
yep.
Everybody's got to go there and start hustling to it.
Yeah.
It's a race in the beginning.
It is. I mean, from that perspective, we probably will see like a constant moving of the map, right? We'll see a constant fluctuation of where things are, which, from what they've said, there actually isn't going to be a global world map. You have to actually make that. So you're going to need scouts constantly going out and seeing where is everything. Yeah. So you have a constant up-to-date perspective of that. Zara, what's your take on that?
So with the Art of War video that we saw, it was very intriguing in the first place that there's like all these rules and things to actually start the siege. Like he grabbed the gem or whatever it was and brought it back to the people, and then all of a sudden they start firing. Like, what does that mean? I have so many questions. I need to know. But you can kind of get the gist of it, just a bit, just to infer. But I think that sieges are going to be so freaking chaotic. How do you filter out the people who are going to get in the siege? What if you have your people already set out that you want to be in the siege, but these random people just join and you can't really do anything to defend? Like, what if there's a cap and there's only 40 people that can participate in the sieges? So I don't really know which way it's gonna go. I think that's gonna be interesting, and my mind's gonna be blown. That's all I know.
I could definitely see a lot of those being possible. From a perspective of this being an open world, right? Especially with the node sieges, I can see someone coming in at the last second and saying, hey, this node's further away from us. This is the one that's underneath. They're basically sieging the one that's closer to us, because they're trying to expand their territory. Let's help them do it. Let's fuck them up. Let's mess them over, Let's mess them over in that sense, to where then you just jump in, like you were saying. You could just jump in, and then just start killing the defenders. Because I think
just walk up and flag and kill whoever they want.
Exactly. Right. Maybe it's just mindless. You don't even know which side is which. You just came over here just to like pick some bushes or something, and you see this whole siege going down. You're like, man, I want to join, and you just pick a side. It doesn't matter, Who cares? But then again, somebody. Imagining this whole cinematic video of it all going down.
Now, here's a question: Could potentially 3 different nodes go against one node at one time?
No, I don't think that could happen.
Maybe though,
well,
right?
Like if they're all
allianced.
Are you saying like if they're all initiating each individual siege against them, like?
So like
or
basically
just one siege.
They participate in one large giant siege against this node. Like let's say it's like 3 level 4, village nodes going up against a metropolis. They're like, we can't do this on our own. We're getting locked out because this metropolis took over all of our area together. Let's ban our stuff together, let's ban our resources together, and let's go attack this node together.
I think the best part about that is the way something becomes a metropolis isn't on their own. They have alliances too. So it's not like they're just going to be standing there defending off three different nodes. But definitely I think that 3 nodes can come at you with that. I think that they're going to bring people in from everywhere and, defend themselves, because they're not going to go down without a fight. I don't think anybody wants to.
Yeah. I mean, it would be, see, to me, that's what makes this exciting from a perspective of history, right? Like, could you imagine having like a statue erected because where this statue stood, there was once a metropolis there, that was leveled to the ground by, these civilizations rising to power, right? It'd be like just like Europe back in the medieval times, or back in time of Rome, right? Like where you had the Gauls coming up against the Romans all the time, the barbarians knocking at their door until eventually Rome fell. There could definitely be similar situations in this world. And so we are running a bit short on time here, but I wanted to go over one last thing, which was the open world combat. Being that this game is completely open world, do you think that there will be, field battles, not necessarily a siege against another node, but essentially a giant battle out in like an open field, to just, settle disputes, to, basically war up against another guild, another alliance, for especially resources, because you can essentially physically hold that territory by killing anyone that walks into it, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think there's going to be a lot of that going on, and I think it's that what you said makes complete sense. That's going to happen. I feel like that's going to happen all the time.
Yeah,
I think especially just over small disputes, like if this guy's just ganking you out of nowhere, you want to call up your guys. You want to or maybe you don't, or maybe you do. It doesn't matter. If you do, maybe he'll call his guys, and it's going to turn out to be this huge, expansive battle. And you don't realize it, that other no-names are coming in, and maybe they want to fight too. Because everywhere people are dying and they're dropping stuff, and the scavengers are going to go around and loot people's shit. I don't really know if it's going to be if you kill the person, you get their loot, or if it's free for all. That's a good question.
Like that.
Yeah, I think so
Yeah.
too.
Loot's kind of pushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
But I think that'll be very interesting, like a battle without any real like upcoming commencements, because we're talking about sieges, right? And how they have like waiting periods before they can initiate. This outright battle would be really fun, in my opinion. I think it would be grand.
I could see like even like, let's say, you know, since resources, they do expire, right? They basically get used up in this world. What if you find the only vein of ore that's left in this, you know, huge region of the map, you know, which where the only other veins that have spawned at least are, you know, impractical to get to, right? And then you start hoarding that, your guild starts hoarding that, you know, you hope so, right? But at the same time, that then provides a huge incentive for everyone else to gang up on you because they want a piece of that ore.
Yeah.
You know,
it would be up to that node to start making some alliances.
Yeah.
Start making some trade agreements. Like, we'll trade you this ore for such and such value.
Exactly. They would definitely monopolize the market in a sense. You know, that would be a real big deal with that.
Especially since all the auction houses are local. There's not
exactly, yeah.
Each node's gonna have its own independent market.
Exactly. And that on its own right there kind of reminds me of Star Wars Galaxies itself. You know, one thing I'm hoping is that they do keep away from that global market, because it will cause people to actually search for resources, search for different stuff around the world, and that on its own will cause conflict.
Well, and because you can also turn shops into freeholds.
Oh yeah.
Or you can turn freeholds into shops. So finding where people put their shops is going to be really cool.
That's true as well. I didn't think much about that.
I'm gonna have a furniture shop out there somewhere, so y'all have fun finding it.
No, I could also see a merchant at the same time saying, "Hey, I don't like that guy that's like two freeholds down because he's selling a cheaper product than I have. I'm gonna get my buddies to literally stand outside of his little establishment so no one can get in. They're gonna have to pay me protection money if they wanna operate." You know, you could do that technically. You could kill anyone that gets close to it.
Turn them into furniture.
And this also brings on another point that we were talking about before about how you have to make friends in this game. You cannot be a solo player because of this reason. You don't want to live in your freehold for the rest of your life because you're going to get ganked by these people and you can't sell what you need to sell. They could also like kill your customers. You won't get any input. So I think so you just gotta communicate. I think it's really important, essential.
I agree. I think that's the foundation of this game, is that multiplayer aspect, and that on its own is gonna be what brings it well past a decade. I can see myself playing this for the next 20 years. You know, I mean, Ultima Online's still going on. You know, that you can still play that 20 years after, right? So
I know, but it's so bad.
Hopefully they'll come out with a better updated version once a decade goes by.
RuneScape 4.
All right, guys, that kind of leads into the end here. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you both for coming on today. I'm going to give you guys both a couple moments here to, you know, promote yourself, to kind of tell people where they can find you. Zara, we're going to start off with you since you're our guest today. Tell people where they can find you. What about your guild?
So, especially in the forums, we bump it about a couple days every week. You can check us out there, and in the Discord once a week we post there. Our community talks in Ash's Discord as well, and I'm always here. I'm literally always at my computer, so just drop me a message and say hi. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, Saint.
Well, I'm going to be streaming Ashes. I'll be starting in Alpha 1 with our buddy Sin here. So that's going to be awesome. We're going to be kicking butt, guys. We're going to be streaming a lot. So you can find me at twitch.tv/SaintNerd. And everything else at SaintNerd, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on all of that. So you can find me all there. I usually stream every day. I'm taking a little bit of a break right now, just kind of waiting for Ashes Alpha 1 to start. And then, because we're going to be hitting it hard. We're going to be doing a lot. So watch
Oh, yeah. Well, you guys know me. I am Sinbad, the leader of Ember. We are a PVX guild. We're going to be taking this world by storm. We're going to be doing everything we can to outwork everyone else and make an impression on this world that no one can forget. When it comes down to it, we are an economic-based guild. We're also going to be using quite a lot worth of PvP to constantly farm resources, PvE to constantly farm resources, PvP to protect those things and to take over and dominate that local market. From a perspective of what we hope to accomplish in game, I don't think you could find a better guild to go with, because we're going to be the best when it comes down to it. Sorry, Zara, just saying.
Oh boy, well, it's called the Ember podcast, not Nexus podcast. So, I'll let you say what you need to say.
Yeah. But with that being said, if you guys do want to find us, you can visit us at our website, which is embers.us. You can also visit us on our Discord or on the forums. Feel free to stop by. We have an awesome community, a really fast-growing community of people that have really built a lot of good friendships and have found a home here. So if you're interested in checking us out, just come by and we'll be happy to talk to you. For now, though, guys, thank you for joining us for another week of the Ember podcast. Thank you very much for listening and for providing feedback in those comments. Please subscribe. Please leave a like up. It helps us out quite a lot. For now, though, you guys have a great day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.